What happens if an elderly person has no one to care for them? 5 ways to stay safe living alone. What if one day you needed help but no one was there to hear your call? The house is silent, the clock ticks. You reach for the phone but your hands tremble. What if no one answers? What if no one even knows? For millions of older adults, this is an unsettling reality. Living alone can be empowering, but it also comes with hidden risks. What happens if you slip in the shower? If a scammer targets you? If loneliness slowly wears you down, not just emotionally but physically? But here's the truth. You are not powerless. You don't have to wait for a crisis to take action. In the next few minutes, we'll uncover 5 life-changing strategies that will keep you safe, confident, and independent. Simple steps that could be the difference between struggling in silence and thriving with security. So don't look away, because what you're about to learn could save a life. Maybe even your own. Before we begin, hit the like button to help others find this vital information, and if you haven't yet, subscribe for more expert advice on aging wisely and living fully. Now, let's get started. 1. Stay socially connected, even if you live alone. There's an old Cherokee proverb that says, "A single stick breaks, but a bundle of sticks is strong." For centuries, our ancestors understood the power of connection. They built communities where elders were revered, wisdom was passed down, and no one was left to face life alone. But today, something has changed. Margaret, 78, spent most of her days in silence. At first, she enjoyed the peace. No one to interrupt her thoughts, no obligations. But as the years passed, the stillness became heavy. She would wake up and wonder, if something happened to me today, how long would it take for someone to notice? One afternoon she remembered something her father once told her. People aren't meant to live in the shadows. The heart withers without warmth. That evening she did something she hadn't done in years. She knocked on her neighbor's door and invited her over for coffee. It was awkward at first, but soon they were laughing, reminiscing about old times, and planning the next get-together. Here's how you can build meaningful connections in your life. Create a daily communication habit. A simple phone call, text, or check-in with a neighbor can make all the difference. Join a community group, whether it's a senior center, a local club, or a church group. Social engagement keeps the mind sharp and the heart full. Use technology to stay in touch. Video calls, online forums, and virtual classes can help bridge the distance. The famous American philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "The only way to have a friend is to be one." You don't have to wait for loneliness to find you. Take the first step toward meaningful connections today. Now, let me tell you a story, one that will stay with you long after this video ends. I've lived long enough to see the world change in ways I never imagined. When I was a boy, neighbors knew each other by name. People sat on their porches, swapping stories, until the sun disappeared behind the hills. But now, the doors stay closed. Voices are replaced by the hum of televisions, and many of us, despite all the years we've lived, find ourselves alone. There was a man I knew once, Thomas, a proud, stubborn old fellow. He lived just a few houses down from me. We weren't close, but I'd see him from time to time, sitting on his porch, watching the world pass by. One winter I noticed something. Thomas's porch light, which always glowed in the evenings, had been dark for days. His mailbox, usually empty, was overflowing with letters no one had collected. I knocked on his door, no answer. Later I learned that Thomas had fallen in his kitchen and hadn't been found for 2 days. He was alive, but barely. The doctors said that if someone had checked on him sooner, it would have made all the difference. I visited him in the hospital, expecting to see the same tough, no-nonsense man I'd always known. But when I walked in, I found someone different. Weaker, yes, but it was his eyes that struck me. They were filled with something I'd never seen in him before. Regret. He told me in a voice that had lost all its edge. I always thought I didn't need anyone. But when I was lying there, helpless, I kept thinking of all the times I could have reached out. I just didn't. Thomas never fully recovered. He moved into a nursing home after that. The last time I saw him, he was sitting by a window, staring at the world outside, alone, in a room full of empty chairs. There's an old American saying, "A sorrow shared is a sorrow halved, and a joy shared is a joy doubled." We live in a world that pushes independence like a badge of honor, but the truth is, we were never meant to go through life alone. Margaret figured it out before it was too late. Thomas didn't. And maybe right now, you're standing at that same crossroads, asking yourself, do I reach out? Do I open the door? If you take just one thing from this story, let it be this: you are not alone, but you must choose not to be. So tell me, who in your life would love to hear your voice today? Who might be waiting for someone, anyone, to knock on their door? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Have you ever had a moment where loneliness almost got the best of you? What did you do to change it? Your words might just be the spark someone else needs. And before you go, take a moment to reach out to someone, just one person, because in the end, connection isn't just about who we have, it's about who we choose to hold on to. 2. Prepare for emergencies before they happen. There's a saying attributed to Benjamin Franklin: by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. It's a truth as old as time itself, yet so many people ignore it until the moment disaster strikes. I remember my grandfather telling me a story from his youth about a small town on the banks of the Mississippi River. Every spring, the waters would rise, creeping higher and higher, threatening to flood their homes. Most of the townspeople ignored it, believing the river would never truly breach its banks. But one old man, Mr. Willoughby, spent weeks reinforcing his house, stockpiling supplies, and planning an escape route. People laughed at him. "You're worrying over nothing," they said. But then, one year, the flood came. And when the waters raged through the streets, washing away homes and scattering families, Mr. Willoughby's house stood firm. He was the only one fully prepared, and because of that, he was able to help others. Emergencies don't send invitations. They arrive unannounced, and the difference between survival and tragedy is whether you're ready when they do. I've lived long enough to see how the smallest decisions shape our fate. I've watched people gamble with time, convinced they'll have more of it, only to realize too late that time doesn't negotiate. Take Henry, for example. Henry was my best friend for over 50 years. We met during our time in the army, back when we were young men who thought we were invincible. Life had a way of humbling us both. He lost his wife in his 60s, and not long after I lost mine. We both ended up living alone, checking in on each other when we remembered. One cold January morning, Henry didn't answer his phone. I figured he was sleeping in, but as the day passed, a bad feeling gnawed at me. By the time I made it to his house, I knew something was wrong. His porch light was still on from the night before, and the papers hadn't been picked up. I knocked, then pounded on the door. No answer. I called 911 and 11. When they broke down the door, we found him collapsed in the hallway. A stroke. He had been lying there for almost 36 hours, alone, unable to reach the phone, unable to call for help. The doctors said if someone had found him earlier, he might have recovered. But the damage was done. He never walked again, and his mind was never quite the same. I still think about that day, about how one small change, just one, could have saved him. It's not about paranoia, it's about prudence. Here's what I wish Henry had done, what I wish more people would do. Establish a check-in routine. A simple text or call to a friend each morning. No one should ever go a full day without someone noticing their absence. Invest in a medical alert system. Technology is a blessing when used wisely. A small device around the neck or wrist could mean immediate help in an emergency. Keep emergency information visible. A list of medications, health conditions, and emergency contacts posted on the fridge can be the difference between life and death. Have a go bag ready. Life is unpredictable. A bag with medications, IDs, and essentials ensures you're never caught unprepared. I've had people tell me, "I'm healthy, I'm careful. That won't happen to me." I used to think the same way. But life has taught me differently. It's not just about health, it's about the unexpected. A slip on the stairs, a sudden heart attack, a gas leak in the middle of the night. We don't get warnings, only wake-up calls. Henry's wake-up call came too late. But maybe yours doesn't have to. Let me ask you something. If something happened to you tonight, would someone know? Would help arrive in time? Or would you, like Henry, be found when it was too late? I don't say this to scare you, I say it because I care. Because I know that somewhere out there, someone is reading this and thinking, "I'll get to it tomorrow." Don't wait. Start today. And before you go, tell me in the comments, have you ever had a close call that made you rethink your safety? Your story might just help someone else take that first step, because in the end, being prepared isn't just about protecting yourself, it's about making sure the people who care about you never have to wonder, what if? 3. Make your home a safe space. There's an old saying from the pioneer days, "Fix the fence before the cattle run loose." It meant that a small effort in prevention could stop a disaster down the road. Our ancestors, who built homesteads on the untamed frontier, understood this truth well. They knew that a weak roof, a neglected well, or an unsecured barn door could mean ruin when the storms came. But today, in our own homes, we often forget this wisdom. We assume that because we've lived in the same house for decades, we know every step, every corner, and every risk. But familiarity can be dangerous. The things we ignore are often the ones that hurt us the most. I was born and raised in the same house I live in now. It's a modest place, nothing fancy, but every inch of it carries a story. The living room where I danced with my wife on our anniversary. The kitchen where my kids sat, swinging their little legs under the table. The hallway where I paced the floor, worrying the night my daughter was coming home late. This house has been my sanctuary, my history, my pride. But one winter morning, it almost became my tomb. It was early, just before sunrise. I got up like I always did, heading to the kitchen for my coffee. I didn't even think about the small rug at the foot of my bed. It had been there for years, but my foot caught on it, and in an instant, I was falling. The pain was immediate, sharp, and unforgiving. My hip had taken the worst of it. I tried to move, but my leg wouldn't respond. I reached for the bedside table to pull myself up, but my arms felt weak. Panic set in. I was alone, no one was coming. Minutes passed, then an hour. The cold from the floor seeped into my bones. My mind started drifting, back to the days when I was strong, when I could get up without thinking. I never imagined a day when I couldn't. It was nearly 7 hours before help arrived. A neighbor noticed my lights hadn't turned on like usual. When I didn't answer the phone, he came over and found me still lying there. I was lucky. Others aren't. The hospital stay was long. The rehab was harder. But the worst part? The realization that this could have been prevented. When I got home, I saw everything differently. That rug that had tripped me, gone. The dim hallway lighting, replaced with motion sensor lights. The bathroom where I could have slipped, now I had grab bars and a sturdy shower chair. And the biggest change, I stopped thinking that because I knew my home, it meant I was safe in it. Here's what I wish I had done sooner. Install motion sensor lights. Your eyes aren't what they used to be. Good lighting can save you from a dangerous fall. Upgrade your bathroom. Non-slip mats, grab bars, and a shower chair make a huge difference. Trust me. Remove tripping hazards, loose rugs, exposed cords, and clutter in walking paths, all risks we overlook until it's too late. Use smart home technology. Voice-activated devices can turn on lights, lock doors, and even call for help. A few small adjustments now can prevent major accidents later. Make your home work for you, not against you. I get it, change is hard. I spent my whole life believing I didn't need to adjust, that the same house I'd lived in for decades was safe just because it was familiar. But familiarity doesn't prevent accidents. Awareness does. Action does. I had to accept that age changes things, that no matter how strong I feel, the reality is that one bad fall can take away everything I love. My independence, my home, my life. And here's what I want you to think about. Are you ignoring risks in your own home because you assume it won't happen to me? I thought that too. Until it did. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a close call in your own home? Something that made you rethink the way you move through your space? Or maybe you've already made safety changes. What's one thing you did that made a big difference? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Your story might just help someone else avoid the mistake I made. Because in the end, your home should protect you, not put you in danger. And the best way to honor the life you've built is to make sure you can keep living it safely. 4. Stay physically and mentally strong. The Greek philosopher Socrates once said, "It is a shame for a man to grow old without ever seeing the strength and beauty of which his body is capable." But strength isn't just about muscles. It's about resilience, adaptability, and a mind that refuses to wither before its time. Our ancestors understood this well. The Native Americans, for example, taught their children that a mind without challenge and a body without movement grow weaker each day. The pioneers who built this country knew that idleness invited decay, and that a sharp axe and a strong back were useless if the mind behind them wasn't just as sharp. Yet today so many of us accept decline as inevitable. We sit more, we move less, we say, "I'm too old for that," and let our bodies and minds wither before they have to. But let me tell you a story about a man who refused to let time dictate his fate. I met Frank when we were both in our early 70s. He was the kind of man who had spent most of his life working with his hands, a carpenter, proud and strong. But when I met him, he had the look of someone who had given up. His wife had passed, his children were grown and busy. The house that had once been filled with life now sat too quiet. Frank spent his days sitting in front of the TV, barely moving except to shuffle to the kitchen or the bathroom. One day, he told me, "I used to be strong, but now, it doesn't matter. What's the point?" I didn't have an answer for him then, but life did. One evening he was alone at home when he reached for something on the top shelf. His knee buckled, his balance failed, he fell, hard, and he couldn't get back up. It was nearly 5 hours before anyone found him. 5 hours of helplessness, of realization, of regret. When he was finally able to move again, he made a decision. "This won't happen to me again," he told me, and he meant it. Frank didn't try to become a marathon runner overnight. He started small, a short walk down the driveway, a few minutes of stretching in the morning. At first his legs ached, his back complained, but every day he kept going. He practiced balance exercises, standing on one foot while brushing his teeth, walking heel to toe across his living room. Simple things, but they worked. He challenged his mind, crossword puzzles in the morning, learning to play an old harmonica he found in the attic, calling his grandson to teach him how to use the internet instead of letting it intimidate him. He changed how he ate, more leafy greens, more fish, less sugar. He called it eating for the man I want to be, not the man I used to be. He got outside, sunlight on his skin, fresh air in his lungs, a reminder that life was still happening beyond the walls of his home. Weeks turned into months, months turned into a year, and one day I saw something I hadn't seen in Frank in a long time. He laughed, not a chuckle, not a polite smile, but a deep, full-bodied laugh. He wasn't just alive, he was living again. People like to say, "You can't teach an old dog new tricks." But that's a lie. The real truth is that an old dog just has to want to learn. Aging isn't just about adding years. It's about deciding how you're going to spend the ones you have left. Will you sit and wait for decline to find you? Or will you fight for every step, every breath, every clear thought? Frank made his choice. What's yours? Have you ever had a moment where you realized your body or mind wasn't as strong as it used to be? What did you do about it? Or maybe you've already started taking steps toward a stronger, sharper future. If so, what's one small habit that has made a big difference in your life? Drop a comment below and share your experience, because the fight against decline isn't just personal, it's something we can all learn from each other. And remember, the best time to start was yesterday. The second best time, right now. 5. Protect yourself from scams and crime. There's an old saying from the Wild West, "Trust but verify." Back then, a handshake was a man's word, but even the most honest towns had their share of tricksters, snake oil salesmen, card sharks, and silver-tongued liars. Times have changed, but deception has not. Today, instead of con men in dusty saloons, we have scammers behind glowing screens and voices on the phone pretending to be people they're not. And the sad truth? They often go after the ones who were raised to be polite, to trust a voice on the other end of the line, to believe that most people mean well. But let me tell you a story, one that nearly cost me everything. I'm no fool. I've seen a lot in my 78 years. Wars, depressions, political scandals. I've been lied to, stolen from, and played for a fool before. But I never thought it would happen again. Then one day the phone rang. It was a man with a serious voice. "Mr. Callahan, I'm calling from your bank. There's been suspicious activity on your account." My stomach tightened. I'd heard about scams before, but this one sounded real. He had my name. He had my bank's name. He even knew the last 4 digits of my checking account. "We need to confirm your full account number and security code to protect your funds," he said. Now, I was never one to panic, but I was raised to trust authority, and at that moment, I almost gave it to him. Almost. Then I remembered something my grandfather told me when I was a boy. A wolf never knocks on your door with its teeth showing. It comes wearing a friendly smile. I paused, took a breath, and I hung up. Afterward, I called my bank directly. No fraud, no security breach, just a scam, hoping I'd let my guard down. I was lucky, but others aren't. Some folks lose their life savings to scams just like this one, not because they're stupid, not because they're careless, but because they're too trusting in a world that no longer deserves it. Here's what I've learned. Ignore unknown callers. If it's important, they'll leave a message. Never give out personal information over the phone. Your bank will never ask for it. Neither will Social Security, the IRS, or anyone legitimate. Use a video doorbell. If you don't recognize the person, don't open the door. Have a trusted person to consult. If something feels off, check with a friend or family member before doing anything. Trust your instincts. If it feels wrong, it probably is. I don't like to say this, but the world isn't as honest as it used to be. When I was young, a deal was sealed with a handshake. If someone borrowed $1, you got it back the next day. Now we live in a time where you can be robbed without ever leaving your house. But here's the good news. We are not helpless. Scammers count on fear. They want you to panic, to feel rushed, to second-guess your gut. But knowledge is power. And the moment you refuse to play their game, you win. Have you or someone you know ever been targeted by a scam? What happened? And what's the best piece of advice you'd give to someone who might be too trusting? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts, because the best way to stop a scam is to shine a light on it. And remember, a wolf never stops hunting, but that doesn't mean we have to be its prey. If you have one thing I've learned in my years, it's that the world keeps changing, but human nature stays the same. There will always be good people and bad people, honest folks and deceivers, those who build and those who take. And as we get older, we become more of a target not because we are weak, but because we were raised in a time when trust still meant something. But here's the thing. Trust should be earned, not given freely. That doesn't mean we should live in fear, but it does mean we should live aware. A scammer doesn't care about your past, your hard work, or the sacrifices you've made to save what you have. They don't see you as a person. They see you as an opportunity. And that is why we must protect ourselves. Not just with locks on our doors, but with knowledge in our minds. So before you click that link, answer that unknown number, or believe that urgent message that tells you to act now, pause, take a breath, and remember, if something feels off, it probably is. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you or someone you know ever been tricked by a scam? What did you learn from it? Your story could help someone else avoid a costly mistake. So drop a comment below, share your wisdom, and let's stand together against those who think they can take advantage of us. Because at the end of the day, we may be older, but we are not fools.